let's explore a passage from Yong-jia Xuan-jue's Song of Enlightenment. And then let's meditate. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is brought to you by the good-hearted folks who help support this channel on Patreon. This morning, we could chant and meditate and enjoy a lesson or two. But first, if you love Star Wars and you wish to meditate as profoundly as Qui-Gon Jinn on Naboo, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Good news, if at any time during this morning's live stream you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation or Buddhist philosophy or how to apply them to your life, simply type that question in great detail in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, this would be much easier to chant if I remembered to put in the dry critical mark, so we'll do that right now. And that's probably the wrong words. I just call this my chanting notation. So let's do this real quick. Let's chant. Two monks were guilty of murder and carnality. The leader who party had the light of a globe, he just added to their count. Vimalakati cleared their doubts at once as sunshine melts the frost and snow. All right, so we're continuing with the theme of the impact of moral downfalls or acting without empathy and its effect upon our spiritual path. And to elaborate on this, I wish to review two lists found in the text that I can access behind button 5. A careful study of the 81 poems of the Tao Te Ching reveals that in the arena of philosophy, Yang attributes, Yang makes us rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, competitive, and cruel, whereas Yin makes us flexible, loving, laid back, egalitarian, cooperative, and kind. Yin can take us places that Yang, the path of Yang, cannot. Under the influence of Yang, we tend to be rigid and fearful and controlling, seeking to coerce ourselves and others into doing what's right out of fear for consequences and desire for reward. That is complete opposite of being flexible, loving, laid-back, egalitarian, cooperative, and kind, driven by love, kindness, upon the path of being laid back. We do not rely on coercion. We do not rely on tantalizing people or ourselves. Now let's return to button 14. The two monks were guilty of murder and carnality. Murder clearly is an act of violence. The great Tibetan saint Karma Chakme Rinpoche taught that the essence of all morality all boils down to simply non-violence. Treating someone who wants a relationship as merely an object is a form of violence. If you are with someone who enjoys relationship, sex outside of relationships, having that type of relationship with them could be destructive to you if you personally are wired for relationships. If you're not, then it's a completely different thing. For someone who is devoted entirely to the path, raising children could be a burden because all their time goes to earning money to support their children. So in other words, if recreational sex results in the birth of children, then the right thing to do, the non-violent thing to do, the empathetic thing to do is to use your talents and abilities to provide for them at the very least. For people who don't want to spend their lives, 2/3 of their lives or more in labor trying to support others, heterosexual sex is not recommended. Personally, I have no problem with people engaging in same-sex relationships, since that won't result in reproduction and that won't result in ethical and financial burdens in the case of unwanted pregnancy, in the case of unwanted deliverance. Now, personally, I have no problem with abortion. I do not possess a uterus. I am not an expert in this subject. Abortion has been around since... There are people who say it's been around since the very beginning of the Neolithic era. Some conject even to the Paleolithic era. So personally, I have no problem with it. But life is much simpler if those who are on the spiritual path do not put themselves in positions where they could have to spend their lives, energy, and time supporting others. So that's the whole idea of carnality right here. Now, there's going to be some people who will always be scared of what people think and say, well, and we'll say words to the effect, well, what people think. Do the right thing, not out of fear of reprisal. Do the right thing, not out of desire for reward. If our meditation practice is healthy, we will cultivate two things automatically. Love, which is spontaneous and uncontrived, and a type of centered spontaneity. When our love and our spontaneity are healthy, they guide us in making the best decisions. These two monks were not under the sway of a centered spontaneity. They were not under the sway of love, spontaneous and uncontrived. Under whose sway were they? They were under the sway of Upali, who had the glow of who had the light of a glowworm, which seems to be a wonderful metaphor of charisma. One of the flaws in our evolution is that we are often entranced by the charismatic. It's been said that the three primary leaders the four primary leaders, I feel like Michael Palin in the Spanish Inquisition skit. The five primary leaders of the working in World War II were all considered by their countrymen to be eloquent, compelling, and charismatic communicators. In the era of radio, before the era of television, their charisma was vocal oriented. In the era of the 60s, the visual became a big part of the charisma because of television. It's been said that Kennedy beat Nixon in their debates because visually Kennedy was more charismatic. So there's something very, very primal within each mammal. There is a drive for children to be close to the primary caregiver. And the primary caregiver kind of enchants them or mesmerizes them with mammalian milk, which is high in something that is akin to opiates. The exact term eludes me at the moment. If you know the exact term, please bring it to my attention. But it's one of the reasons humans find cheese so addictive. The enchantment created by a breastfeeding infant ensures their proximity to the primary caregiver, who can not only feed them but protect them from predators. This ceases during the time of puberty, when the tween or the child becomes an adolescent. Their allegiance to their parents is broken. Their allegiance to the group overall ignites. They switch gears from vertical devotion to horizontal empathy. And they become and in humans, we see that in junior high, when all of a sudden the approval of one's peer group supersedes the approval of one's parents in the heart of the child. Contrary to the ravings of angry fundamentalists, that is natural and healthy. But what has that to do with charisma? Well, just as there is an intoxicating quality in breast milk that ensures the proximity of a mammalian infant to its mother, charisma has a similar effect, turning us from adolescents and adults back to children, no longer concerned with horizontal empathy, but rather with vertical devotion. Only politically or socially, the charisma makes us vertically devoted not to a primary caregiver, but to the charismatic individual who who communicates directly or inferentially that they will be our guidance and our protector and our safety and our bliss. And that leads us to the cult of personality, just like the wonderful song from the late 80s, but to a cult of personality. And so that's what happened with these two monks. They felt under the cult of personality of this fellow Upali. And his presence didn't help. Now, judging from this text, it's unclear whether he confused them about the validity of murder or carnality, or whether he convinced them that there was no way to make it right. The Vimalakirti Sutra is vast, and I'm working on refreshing my memory of that text. As someone with ADHD whose memory often resets, that's an ongoing practice. So I'll have to get back to you on that. Vimalakirti, as contrasted with Upali, Vimalakirti, the householder, cleared their doubts at once, as sunshine melts the frost and snow. Now, Vimalakirti did not berate them. He did not coerce them. His his area of genius was in understanding the wisdom of letting go, the wisdom of non-duality, the wisdom of emptiness. And he showed them how the fundamental meditation technique, which we'll explore in a moment or two, can help them to plug into emptiness, not in an intellectual way, not in a blind faith way, but in a visceral way that can help them to transcend their guilt and to transcend the effects of karma, if there is such a thing, and to make better sense of the world around them. I would be remiss if I did not immediately explore that technique with you right now. So let's tap button 9. Mindfulness and meditation are known by many names, or I should say the pair, the dynamic duo of mindfulness and meditation are known by many names, such as Zen, Chan, Dhyana, Mahamudra, Ati Yoga, Dzogchen, and Trekcho, which translates as slice through. Physically, we just emulate this posture of the Buddha, legs crossed, not in a full lotus position, but merely one shin stacked upon the other. Being respectful of the limitations of our knees, opening up from the hips, hands folded in the lap so that the edge of each palm brushes gently against the lower abdomen, reminding us to breathe deeply. The shoulders find the middle ground between hunched completely forward like Quasimodo or pulled all the way back like a terrified Paris Island recruit. A gentle Mona Lisa-like smile dances upon the corners of the mouth, the apples of the cheeks, and the crow's feet of the eyes. We generate a subtle traction between our pelvis and our head. There you go. Physically, you're good to go. We'll explore the hands in several minutes. When it comes to respiration, we'll want our inhalation to be shorter and sharper, and our exhalation to be longer and softer. Fair enough. Now it comes to the intellect. So let us explore mindfulness. As we breathe in, we silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this. Natural selection has caused our every inhalation to be wired to our sympathetic nervous system, which has evolved not for active concentration, but rather for mere awareness. Vulnerable, passive, visceral, random. What could we notice? We could notice sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, including emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. Now let's turn our attention to meditation. We've just noticed things. We might notice, the things that we notice could be external or internal, physical or mental, pleasurable or painful, interesting or boring, glorious or grotesque. Well, how do we make sense of it? What do we do with it? How do we process it? During our exhalation, we silently and mentally recite the 3-syllable verb relaxing. For every exhalation has been selected to be wired to our parasympathetic nervous system, which has evolved for both physical relaxation as well as mental release. What has that to do with emptiness and non-duality? With every exhalation, I should say, as we physically relax into our exhalation, all that we perceived during our inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast empty void. So notice I used vast empty void as a simile, because I had the word as in there. A simile is only as effective as it is relatable. So what is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although is tantalizing to the eye, is intangible to the hand. Reach towards the sky, you will not pull back a handful of blue. I guarantee it. So, emptiness does not negate mindfulness. As we breathe in, we experience all sorts of things. As we exhale and relax into the exhalation, we release all sorts of things. That's natural, and that is healthy. So, let's make it simple. If we can notice pain as we breathe in and relax in the pain as we breathe out and experience its non-graspability, its vulnerability to release. And then we can do the same thing with pleasure or bliss. Notice it and then release it. Then what do pleasure and bliss and pain have in common? They both can be noticed. They both can be released. Therefore, at least in that one aspect, they are non-dual. Now, non-dual doesn't mean exactly the same. It means similar in just one aspect, kind of like an overlapping Venn diagram. So here's a very crude example. Let's pretend you and I were going for a stroll in my neighborhood in Southern California, and we happened upon a steaming load of doggy doo. That steaming load of doggy doo is completely opposite from delicious, organic, fair trade dark chocolate. But they do have a few things in common, including the fact that they both can be noticed and they both can be released. So although they have that one thing in common, like an overlapping Venn diagram, they are not identical. Some people fancy themselves so spiritual that they can't tell the difference between anything. That's not wisdom, that's folly. If you think you're so spiritual that you can't tell the difference between doggy doo and chocolate, I'm sorry, you don't get to putter around in my kitchen. No, thank you. I will pass. So, it can be surmised that when Vimalakirti was setting those two monks straight, he didn't say that wisdom trumps empathy. That because of non-duality, there is no good and bad, and you can do whatever you want. The two can exist. We can have empathy, and we can have the wisdom of letting go. The wisdom of letting go ensures that our love will not be neurotic. But fMRI studies have shown that the more we notice and let go, the easier it is to feel empathy. Therefore, if we are using non-duality as a workaround, an end run around empathy, then that's very telling, and it tells us that our meditation isn't working right. We've most likely confused concentration for meditation, because concentration will feed ruthlessness, while true meditation will feed empathy. So now that we understand the passage, that the key to transcending the guilt of what we do is not self-loathing, it's not ritual, it's not suicide. It is to return to mindfulness, and and to practice that mindfulness vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. So being completely vulnerable to what we've done, the consequences of what we've done, and our feelings about all the above. Be completely vulnerable about all those things as we breathe in, but as we relax into our exhalation to mentally release them. That opens the pathway that opens the pathway to not only additional empathy, but to also the wisdom of centered spontaneity, which will guide us in how to move forward in our lives, because everybody plays the fool, just like the main ingredient taught us in 1972. Everybody plays the fool. No one makes it through life without making someone angry or making someone sad, for rational or irrational reasons. As entities who evolved to be social and to thrive in a social setting, that seems like an inevitability. So using the vulnerability of mindfulness and the wisdom of meditation can help us to navigate the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Having hopefully tied that up in a big red bow, let's turn our attention now to the practice text. Go to a restaurant, and you'll most likely receive an hors d'oeuvre before your main dish and a dessert dish after your main dish. Our dessert is going to be a short chant of the four immeasurables. Our hors d'oeuvre is going to be a short chant to help us exercise the neural pathways responsible for empathy and enthusiasm. Together. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging, by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging, by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. May I liberate all beings from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging, by relying on the Buddha's example, instructions, and students. By the way, the Vimalakirti Sutra is very important. It's one of the things that really, that the author of the text, the Song of Enlightenment, attributed to his enlightenment. Well, we've already explored the meditation instructions. Bear with me, I need to blow my nose for a moment. And I'm back. Let's make sure the audio's back. Okay, and I'm back. Okay, so we've gone through the meditation instructions. Let's meditate. Now remember, if at any point you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation or Buddhist philosophy or how to apply them, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window on the right. There will come times when you feel bored. When that happens, notice the boredom with great vulnerability as you breathe in. Relax into the boredom as you breathe out. And you'll feel that in the absence of resisting the boredom, it becomes rather inert. You might notice that the prepositional demonstrative pronoun this is profoundly vague. It's supposed to be. It refers to whatever we experience, external or internal, physical or mental, pleasurable or painful, interesting or boring, glorious or grotesque. Each of those experiences and all the experiences on each of those spectrums can be described with the pronoun this. Good morning. Welcome to the live stream. When you have any specific questions about Buddhist meditation or Buddhist philosophy or how to apply them to your life, simply type your question in the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. Simply put, as far as mindfulness, we practice mindfulness during the inhalation simply by using the label "this" and being vulnerable to whatever we experience, pleasurable or painful. We practice meditation during the exhalation by silently and mentally reciting the 3-syllable verb, relaxing, which helps us to mentally release. Let us seal this morning's practice with a bit of the old wishing love. May everyone be free from misery, may everyone be happy. May no one be separated from the happiness. May everyone have balance from the tyranny of hating, craving, and clinging freed. If you feel that I have earned it, you could type something in the chat window. You could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could share it with a friend. You could even help support this channel on Patreon. In approximately 2.5 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's mid-morning meditation. Until then, may you and yours be happy and healthy. And if you are as geeky as me, this is the way.